Okay, welcome all to the third LinkedIn Live videocast. Why am I creating these LinkedIn Live videocasts? Each guest on the show has had learnings on their personal journey, and I believe these learnings can impact the life of someone outside their immediate circle. Our topic for today is something that is impacting a ton of people. Welcome all to the third LinkedIn Live. So it's a topic that is impacting a lot of folks, which is impact of job search rejection on mental health. So I have two wonderful speakers. The first person is Sarang Brahme. Sarang has a passion that intersects digital employer branding and people experiences. He's present on the who's list of the top HR influencers in India, whether it's SHRM, People Matters, ETHR World, to name a few. And my next guest is Raghav Sharma, who is currently building and growing Whistle, the world's first mental health gym. It started as a passion project for him and now is turned into an entrepreneurial pursuit. Whistle is a mental fitness app that rewards you for finishing your daily mental health exercises. And who better than Raghav to kind of explain what Whistle is and how it helps organizations and people? Raghav, over to you.
Sure. Jonas, thank you for having me here. And lovely meeting you, Sarang. The concept behind Whistle is pretty simple. The idea is that, for it's become a lifestyle choice now that for our physical health, we have we keep like a 30-minute or a 45-minute in our daily routine. But we haven't yet done that for our mental health. So the idea of Whistle is to ensure that you spend those 15-20 minutes a day working. And when I say working, it means exercising on
Mhm.
your mental health, which is why we call ourselves a mental health gym, because like a gym, you receive daily exercises. We believe that, earning gyan about mental health can only take you so far. It's also important that you work on it regularly. So the idea is that you spend those 15-20 minutes a day working using our app, and to ensure that you keep doing that, we reward you for doing that. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love finding commonalities between my speakers. And one of the things that is common between Sarang as well as Raghav is their love for branding and content creation and digital. Another common connection is that we all work for Capgemini. So it's great to have that common connection uh, to take us on this journey. And I want to again welcome Sarang as well as Raghav for being part of this LinkedIn Live video stream. Many thanks to those who have joined through the live stream and showed your support. And to quote Raghav's words, he just put it in a post. I'm expecting this session to be very warm, very real, and an insightful session. So just revisiting our topic again, which is essentially impact of job search rejection on your mental health. We all know it's finding a job is quite a challenge. From rejection letters to uncomfortable interviews to people not responding, which is the most stressful. Job search can be quite intimidating. It can be quite overwhelming, and sometimes you might feel hopeless. So what we intend to do is, through today's discussion, just try and understand what are the signs, what can organizations do, and what can individuals do to kind of cope with it and be aware and overcome some of these challenges. So I'll ask the first question to Sarang, and then Raghav, you could also pitch in. How do you approach delivering job rejection feedback to applicants?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonas, for inviting Raghav. Great to meet you. So I think um, delivering a bad news is always tricky, right? And it's not just about recruitment, but anywhere in the world, anywhere in the business, anywhere in personal life. Unfortunately, not a lot of times recruiters are trained to do it, or there is a proper playbook about it. I'm sure when you get selected, there is a red carpet being shown to you. There is a lot of onboarding kits and you meet a lot of people, but when you're rejected, um, a lot of times, as you said, there's literally no communication. Um, and I think while a lot of people say no communication is also a communication, but I think every person really deserves to be known whether they are selected or rejected. And when you are rejecting someone, the worst way to do that is not telling him or her, right?
Mm.
Because then they are in a forever guess mode, and they start to self doubt sometimes. They start to build perception about themselves, about the organization where they hear or don't hear the news, right? So I think best way is to first really literally communicate. I think there are different ways to communicate, but ensure that the bad news is delivered, because you close the circle. Even in your mind, you're closing that loop and moving on, versus you're constantly thinking about, okay, there might be a ray of hope, or
Yeah.
why someone would have come to me, right? I think so. Number one is really communicate it intentionally. And today's in age of AI, digital robotics, automation, I think there are multiple ways to do that.
Okay.
Secondly, in ideal way is to communicate with some feedback. And that feedback, again, you have a lot of tools which automatically would send out your email saying you're not a fit, you're not selected. But at least some feedback in the sense where you culturally not fit, there was skill misfit, there was a compensation misfit, or something like that, right? So once the feedback is generated, the candidate can also work on that feedback, maybe applying to right jobs, or not applying to the similar job because they would know, hey, it's not going to fit me. Because even candidates are putting themselves in a emotional investment to going through that process, right?
Yeah.
So ideally try to have some feedback. And the best case scenario is that really this is where recruiters or maybe hiring managers can also be a coach, where they tell them that, hey, these are the things that you could improve. Again, I don't know how realistic that is. Maybe for some companies who really think about candidate experience, or their market is very small, a lot of times you get the same candidates, because it is niche. You may also want to coach, or also give some detailed feedback, so that number one, they empathize with candidate. That's a communication that being given to them, that, hey, we really care about you. And the
Mm.
candidate gets a good image. Hey, this is really a company that thought about me, put some time, even if there wasn't any ROI for them. That
Mm.
goes a long way in building that brand or building that recall. So next time when you approach him or her, there is acceptance. Whereas in other cases where you do not deliver anything, and next time you approach the same candidate, you're gonna see get the same
Yeah.
dark response. Hey, why should I bother, right? So I think
Yeah.
these are a few ways where candidates would receive a feedback. But again, to be empathetic on recruiters, they a lot of times deal with hundreds and thousands of candidates, so it may or may not be possible. But again, in today's age, there are some tools, there are ways, and more importantly, I think there needs to be an intent around it.
Mm.
Hmm.
Raghav,
Interesting.
your thoughts on this?
I mean, on the similar lines, the I think the core problem is that, I mean, I guess especially in India, we have always had these structures, like first school, then college, and then you get into a job, and we have a mentality that there can only be one rank one, right? Like this, when we only be one person who's at the top,
Yeah.
and everybody who's not that is essentially, like people start taking it as a merit question, that like, am I not meritorious enough? Like, does it mean I'm not good enough?
Mm.
uh, Whereas from an employer's point of view, it's not just merit. If it was just merit, then probably 30 out of the 100 people who have applied would I mean, cut that merit benchmark that they were looking for. But after that, it's more about, is it the right fit? So one thing that I always encourage and I try and follow when I am interviewing somebody is, like, I start my interview by saying that, See, this will only work out for you if it works out for me as well.
Mm.
So we are looking for the if you and me are the right fit for next 2 years. And because if that doesn't happen, that even though you can come on board, you probably wouldn't have a nice time. You probably wouldn't get the environment that you're looking for, because I'm not the right fit for you.
Yeah,
So explaining that, and probably that starts at like during the interview, even before we reach the phase where they receive a rejection, or let's say an offer letter, is that during the interview making it very clear looking for the best and not necessarily, let's say, the best marketeer or the best finance person out there. That kind of helps them understand that, okay, it's not just it's like a rejection doesn't mean that I probably am not good enough. It probably means that I'm not the right fit for them at this moment. So
wonderful.
that's one thing that I think really helps. And as Sarang said, that ideal case scenario should be that even if somebody is rejected, they do get feedback,
Mm.
instead of a generic, let's say, communication, auto generated mails. Like if they do get specific feedback, that does really feel that, okay, it wasn't like they just they just forgot about me after my interview. They actually thought about it, and based on their discussions they've reached this conclusion that probably I'm not the right fit.
Got it.
So those two things definitely work, in my opinion.
Yeah, very, very nicely said. In terms of, it's not about whether you are the best person, but are you the right fit? And then communicating intentionally is the right way to kind of approach when you're giving feedback to applicants. So let's move on to the next one. And Raghav, if you would like to go first, based on your experience, what are some of the common reactions or responses you have observed from job seekers who face, job rejection? Raghav?
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat the last bit?
Yeah. So, what are some of the common reactions or responses you have observed from job seekers who face a job rejection?
I think the very first thing that happens, of course, disappointment is the obvious response, but the way disappointment works is that it starts messing with their self narrative.
Hmm.
That I have a narrative. Everybody has a narrative about themselves, right?
Hmm.
And in that narrative there are things that they should be able to achieve, or there are things that they should get. Your narrative also has a certain small element of entitlement, that somebody like me should have something like this. So if there's a job for which I think I'm a very good fit, or I feel that I deserve that job and I don't get it, uh,
Hmm.
that disappointment turns into questions like, am I actually right about what I think about myself?
Hmm.
Do I assess my abilities, my capabilities, uh, correctly, or in a fair manner, or otherwise why would I get rejected? So that self narrative, essentially, like that is that's the first challenge that people face. Now that's primarily if it happens a few times, but of course met people who have been on a job seeking journey. There are a lot of people who probably have gone through months where they were looking for a job, and probably that didn't turn up, like it didn't happen for them. For those
Hmm.
people, confidence is the problem, because by then the self confidence has really taken a dip, and the idea that then the idea becomes like, how do you at the next meeting or the next interview that you're setting up, how do you forget about the past and like focus there, because there's a lot of baggage that has been created over the months. In
True.
psychology, there's a term called positive optimism, which essentially
Mhm.
means that, or rather learned optimism in this case, which essentially means that if you can ensure that you go in with an optimistic mindset, your performance would also be better at any task that you're up to.
Mhm.
It's basically like saying like how cricketers have form, wherein like if they've played well in last 4 or 5 matches, on the sixth match they expect to be scoring well, and that ensures that their shots are clean, they're connecting the ball properly. That happens because of learned optimism. That same concept applies when we are applying for jobs as well. If there are, and that comes back to how do we build that kind of resilience. But the idea is that if we can build that learned optimism, that would
Mhm.
ensure that the next interview you turn up for, your baggage isn't there and you're able to perform to the best of your abilities.
Right.
So those are a few things, and the challenges that I see with people who are in the job seeking journey for a while now.
Hmm. Sarang, your thoughts on this, Sarang?
Oh, I think I completely agree with Raghav. I liked his example of cricket. So yeah, I mean, disappointment is definite, but a lot of times people also start to get frustrated,
Hmm.
and especially if they are getting rejected multiple times,
Hmm.
because then they would, I think, as Raghav spoke, I think there's a hint of self doubt that comes into picture, and then you also start to build a perception that, hey, am I has and again today, there are so many changes happening. We talk about agility and everything, that am I not not fit enough in today's scenario, because they might not have gone through this cycle in past, right?
Hmm.
Where you, okay, joined as a fresher, worked in the company for long, 2 years back it was an exact different scenario where everyone was getting like 60%, 100% hike, and suddenly you get into a period where jobs are not coming through, and it's a big change, right? I think it's also managing that change, in that you first accept that, hey, this is happening with me. Maybe the first time it is happening, and it's not just happening with me. I think that's where, uh, having a community to go to is important, whether the people
Hmm.
who are in the same um, job profile as of you, or maybe even it's your friends community, to
Hmm.
sound off some of those questions, and then you're not just doubting yourself, and hey,
Hmm.
this is happening everywhere. So I think
Hmm.
accepting that, and then you start to look at, you know okay, what do I do need to do next? So I think everyone goes through that cycle, and you have no other choice. You have to go through that change management cycle. But I think it's important that you accept that this is not a personal thing, or there's no personal agenda of anyone saying no to me. It is, might be a market reality, it might be a fit issue that Raghav said, it might just, okay, there are not many job opportunities out there, right? So I think there are multiple, it's a bit of a up and down cycle that everyone goes through. But I think after a point of time, it's important to come at acceptance level, reflect on, okay, where is the situation where I am right now, what are the gaps that I need to look at, because then you have to look at do the forward thinking as well. You can't just look back and say, hey, I've rejected in 30 interviews. No, so what's going to happen next? What I've learned from those interviews, maybe I should be choosy about the jobs that I'm applying. Maybe I need to do a bit of a background check of the company and the roles that I'm applying to. Maybe I need to go to the right network and maybe ask for the right roles, because maybe those roles are not coming on job portals or on LinkedIn or stuff like that, right? So I think you need to then get into reflection mode, and then developmental path. Okay, maybe there are some skills that I don't have, which are needed by these jobs. And
Hmm.
maybe that's either the feedback that you're getting, or you're looking at the job description and, hey, I don't have this. So maybe use that time to learn, to develop, to go to your mentors, to coaches, or there's tons of information available. Like there's so much of chat GPT and AI happening. Okay, what does it mean for your role? Even if it's not eating up your job, but that doesn't mean that you have nothing to do about it. Okay, how can I add value? How can I build my pitch, right? um, I think I've seen really some good people who are not just sending CVs blindly to recruiters and people, but they really build a pitch. Okay,
Mhm.
this is what your organization is. These are the values that I bring in. So,
Hmm.
like, thinking forward is also important. But I mean, everyone has to go through that, navigate that change, and that's where I think the mental fitness is so much important. You have to have the community, friends, family to help you go through that transition.
Yeah. Sometimes, it's also like this loop where you get rejected for a particular job, you question your self worth, it lowers your optimism and your confidence. You attend another interview, again you get rejected. That reinforces this belief, and it's a very vicious cycle. Of going through that whole loop over and over again. Whatever you guys had said in terms of not to take it personally, to reach out to friends, etc. Sometimes it's just to even stop. I can cite so many examples where you were not really applying for a job or not really interested, but something happens, you click, and you manage to get the job. Many times because you have not put that pressure on yourself that I have to get this opportunity. It's a make or break thing for me. And sometimes you perform your best when you don't have that pressure or that anxiety that's kind of bogging you down. I want to just touch upon the role of self identity and self worth. So most of us are kind of tied to our jobs. Our job becomes our identity. um, Especially when you work in a corporate environment. You say, when you ask how, which company do you work for, you say it with a lot of pride. I work for X company, I work for Y company. And that company's ethos, that values, the brand is also kind of meshed with you. um, so if you can just touch upon how can you build resilience against the negative impacts that we kind of talked about when it comes to your self identity and self worth.
Sarang, would you like to start? Okay.
Good.
All right. So, I mean, it again, the loop that you were talking about, Jonas. So that's essentially what I mean. There is in psychology there is something called the cognitive behavioral therapy,
Hmm.
which has identified this loop that how your thoughts, your behaviors, and your feelings are
Hmm.
essentially like almost like three vertices of a triangle, and
Hmm.
how it's like that is the loop that essentially you go in. Now, any of these, if like if your feelings become negative, that would invariably affect the thoughts that you have, which in other ways self narrative also or self identity as well, and that will also affect the kind of behavior you show, and that could come out as probably your like the non-verbal cues during an interview, because you have your feeling was disappointment or your feeling, and that affected the thought that now you feel that you are not capable enough. Now that'll show up as your behavior during the interview or in other actions that you do.
Hmm.
So cognitive behavioral therapy essentially says that you need to the way to break out of this loop is you start by working on one of them.
Hmm.
So you can choose, and that you can choose, like you can choose any of that. Now of course there is therapy, the psychotherapy, which is widely available, that
Hmm.
helps you like that helps you work on your feelings part. And the idea there is, if you can work on your feelings, that will automatically then start giving a positive result on your thoughts and on your behavior. Similarly, I mean, there are other, like what Whistle is trying to do. What we are trying to do is we are trying to work on the behavior part of the things. We are saying you start behaving like somebody whose mental fitness who works on their mental fitness, who does regular exercises for their mind, and because you'll do that, that's gonna give you a positive impact on how you feel. Your thoughts, thoughts would be shaped in a more positive manner, and you'll automatically feel more positive as well.
Mm.
Another way of looking at this is, if you still like, another way of working on the behavior and ensuring, like, and then trying to see that if working on behavior can have an impact on feeling and thoughts, is what you call fake it till you make it. And I genuinely feel there's nothing wrong with that approach, because a lot of times a lot of people are doing it and it works, and a lot of times you're not doing it out of, I don't know, some sort of stigma that nobody else really cares about. Like, it's not like my friend really cares about if I was faking confidence in an interview. They
Mm.
wouldn't judge me on that.
Mm.
So that's another way of looking at it. That, it also kind of gives you that fake confidence that ensures that you're able to do better in the selection process. But broadly, as I said, like, the broadly, you these are the three pillars: feelings, thoughts, and behavior.
Mm.
Start by working on one of them. Eventually, all three of them would become healthier and more positive.
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting framework. And sometimes when you put words to emotions, when you put words to feelings, you kind of materialize it. You kind of bring it out into the open. And what you are essentially saying is you can work on it, like how you work on your physical fitness, you can work on your mental aspects and get better at it.
Yeah.
Sarang, what do you think in terms of how can individuals do these things?
Yeah, I think sometimes we also limit ourselves when we think about self identity.
Mm.
And I always say when I deliver my personal branding sessions is you are not what you are currently doing a role in an organization.
Okay.
That is a way you are currently delivering a value based on your skills, experience, and competence. But you are really more than what you are, what your job title says, right? And that's what I always ask everyone: when you look at your LinkedIn title, it think about what is the overall vision, mission that you have in your professional career. I think
Mm.
sometimes to have a broader view of who you are, what you want to be, is also important, because if you don't have one way to do it, which is obviously the most important way of having a job, what are the other things that excites you, that you are passionate about, that you might
Mm.
not have got chance to do it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of people take sabbatical to do those things, and it's a very different scenario when you don't have a job. But
Mm.
you can then also hone those skills and look at, maybe if I was actually good in doing content writing. If I
Mm.
don't have a job, maybe I would look at freelancing opportunities to only do content writing, or
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
do some social media lectures and trainings. I think what happens in that is you continue to be relevant, number one. You continue to expand your boundaries, saying, I'm just not doing one job, but there are other things. And
Mm.
I continue my engagement network and continue to like be relevant. I think
Mm.
in that small brief period, whatever, 2 months, 3 months, and sometimes little longer, it's important to keep yourself engaged in a way that you will add value in your long term. This is not the end. You're not getting a job at this point of time is a bump in the road and is not the end of the road, right? You have to prepare yourself and really redefine your identity, saying next time this happens, I'm not just dependent on one skill. And
Mm.
today with gig working and there's so much of learning available, you can
Mm.
be good at multiple skills, so that if your core job is whatever reason not working out, you have like, okay, plan B, plan C, at least in your mind, and you can then kind of work towards it. So I think sometimes we have to stop limiting ourselves, that I can only do this. But for that, I think you need to prepare right upfront. You can't just do that when you don't have a job. In your normal work as well, you need to continue to learn more skills. You need to understand where the market is moving.
Yeah.
This might have happened because your job is no more relevant, or could be automated, or could be done by AI or chat GPT, stuff like that, right? So how are you ensuring that you becoming relevant even when you have a job would help you in dividend when you don't have it, because then you are already prepared. And if even if you are right now in that case, I think beyond obviously the mental health part of that Raghav mentioned, it's important to see, okay, what are my options, plan B and C. Utilize your
Mm.
network, find coach support over there. Start just going out, and there's a obviously we call to talk about serendipity, right? Get more things out there, and hopefully, you know there will be a place for you as a plan B or plan C. But again, I think that needs to be a thoughtful um, approach, and not just you do when you are at the end of the road.
Yeah. Okay. So Sarang, let's take a very real situation right now. There are numerous people who have been impacted through layoffs. There are financial responsibilities for these individuals, not just for themselves but their families, and they really need to get a job. And in such a scenario where you you know you have to get something to sustain your life, to sustain your living, to sustain your family's health. How does one build resilience in such scenarios? There are going to be people who are not going to respond fast enough. They don't seem to understand your urgency. And typically, this recruiting process takes several months. So, what would be your suggestion? What would be your advice to them?
I think number one, continue to build the network and connections. Most of the job opportunities in this kind of a market will get filled with networking, referrals, right? Because you will have more supply than demand, and people would know the right people. So go back to your friends, connections, past colleagues, ex bosses, to see if they can refer you somewhere, or they know the right people who might help you within the same industry, within the job profile, and so on and so forth. Identify where are the communities for that particular role. Like for recruitment or HR, I'm sure there are multiple communities out there. You be part of it. You get to know new people, and you network, right? Like I think that's really important. Secondly, you do your own research in terms of where are the where for your particular industry, or for the function, where are those jobs, are the where the market is moving, what are the new skills that I want to have, right? And can you then add more value on your resume? So if, let's say, I was doing ABC things, but now they wanted ABCD, what is that additional skill that I can have on my resume, that will make my resume more valuable than it was previously? And that's where again your network comes into picture. They would know what's happening, what are the new skills or new experience competencies that we'll have, right? Third, again,
Mm.
leverage this time to, I talked about self reflection. uh, Find like freelancing jobs, I mean, again, just to gain more experiences. So let's say you don't have experience in skill A, and you will never have that experience because you have not done that in your past job. See if you can do like a freelancing or a gig work somewhere where you earn that experience and then put that back onto your resume, right? I think do that, and always be learning, I would say. Like wherever
Mm.
you are in the career, even if it's a time where you are desperately looking out, learning should kind of never stop, right? And just be out there. I think over the period of time you will start to gain more understanding of what I need to do, what are the gaps in my career or resume or whatever. You will build those connections, and over the period of time there will be job opportunities coming your way, but you need to take proactive steps to get those opportunities. Don't just sit at your home. I have put my profile on Naukri, LinkedIn. No one is coming to me. That's not gonna happen. You have to put
Yeah.
efforts and be proactive. Things are not gonna directly come your way.
Raghav, from a mental health perspective, for somebody who's in this situation, laid off, desperately seeking for a job, what are some of the exercises that they could possibly do to get them into the right mindset when approaching these conversations?
So, I mean, something that Sarang said, which is keep networking. So, I mean, what tends to happen is that we invariably fall into these massive echo chambers That happens because in your job you're working with people or getting new ideas from people who are very similar to you. Like if I am in the marketing job, like I'm mostly talking to the marketeers around me,
Mhm.
and all of and all new ideas that I have, or whatever information about world, about industry, where the industry is moving, what skill sets are on demand in demand right now. All those things, essentially, all those ideas are being built by this echo chamber of people who are similar to you. So
Yeah.
the very first important thing, in my opinion, is to break out of this chamber, like to basically start mingling with people as diverse as possible. Because
Mhm.
only then you would get to only then you'll be exposed to new ideas. And it could also be new skill sets, new ideas, or new ways to finding jobs. I mean, if everybody, like in the beginning, everybody knows, okay, LinkedIn, Naukri, uh, but what if somebody who's not in your network is trying out some other approach? Probably they are creating an assignment even without being asked. They create an assignment, do your brand strategy, and send it to you, and that's how they are looking
Mhm.
for jobs. Right now, those ideas wouldn't come if I don't change my network. So the so and see, social health is also one of the areas under mental health. So finding new and of course healthy communities, and when I say healthy, it doesn't have to be about health specific, but communities which are legit, which are purposeful, for the lack of better word. That is something that becomes very important. A, you can try and find those new communities, or of course you can always out to reach out to industry leaders. But the only thing one needs to do is like ensure that they don't necessarily need to be people from your background or from your function of what you do. Now that's one thing. The other part of it would be uh, building. So I mean, coming back to now, if you are in that state where you're already been laid off and you're like in that state where you're looking for the new job, anxiety is something that's definitely gonna be there. It's very normal to have uncertainty, and uncertainty leads to anxiety. So
Mhm.
to uh, so the first and what anxiety essentially does is that it kind of makes you take wrong decisions, and wrong decisions could be instead of if I have 3 hours free in my day, instead of using them to learn a new skill, I might, because I'm anxious, I'm like, let me just calm myself down and I might sleep, right? So how do you now? So the question then becomes, how do you fix anxiety, or how do you work on your anxiety? So for there are many exercises, like there are a lot of grounding techniques, wherein how I mean, they're very simple activities. Something as simple as looking at like, so there's one of the exercises in our app which is called cloud watching, which essentially means that you look at the clouds, and you try and make meaning out of it. Now, surface, it looks like a fun activity, but learning how to let go of whatever the dominant thought you had, and instead focus on the clouds, and that shift from your dominant into something which is less stressful, something which is lighter, that allows your mind that breathes ideas to think of new stuff. There are many such exercises which essentially promote mindfulness, and mindfulness is very different from meditation. Mindfulness is
Mhm.
essentially just being aware of your surroundings, being present in your moment. It's almost like how athleticism is something everybody has, of course, to varying degrees. Similarly, varying degrees. Now, when I
Yeah.
use my mind athleticism to play football, a very specific exercise, that is meditation. So
Mhm.
that's that. So meditation is essentially a specific exercise that you do using the quality of mindfulness that you already possess. So
Mhm.
cultivating mindfulness, now that could be through any activity. It could be simple activities like cloud watching. It could be, if it works for you, then meditation. If not, then it could just be walking, like trekking. For me, in a period of a very high uncertainty, what really helped me was walking. I used to just walk 8 kilometers, 10 kilometers a day. And because that took a dominant thought from my head of, oh, the uncertainty, am I going to deal with it? It allowed new ideas in my mind. So cultivating mindfulness is probably what I have encountered very good way of dealing with uncertainty and anxiety, and also allowing new thoughts to crop up.
Yeah. And, just piggybacking on your example, what I've found is what can you control? Control the controllables. What I can control is waking up early, working on my physical health, connecting with family. If those things are kind of taken care and everybody around, if I have a support system around me, which to some degree I can control, then the other things which are not in my control, I leave it for the universe to decide. And invariably, if my intention is right, if I put in the work, then I would find a path forward. So I have a few questions from the audience, and I definitely would like your views on it. So there's a question from Sajid Kumar. Cross-functional skill training, is it the individual's responsibility? So I think, Sarang, it's more towards your point where you mentioned, train yourself, get that exposure, do those assignments. Is it an individual's responsibility?
I think fundamentally training is individual responsibility. Um, Organizations will obviously look within their realm in terms of, okay, which skill you should have for that particular job. But again, I go back to my same point, right? Who you are isn't just about what you do that role in the organization. You always should think from a long term perspective. If your organization provide you that support, well and good. If that doesn't happen in today's scenario, not every organization has that kind of budget to reskill everyone, or maybe some smaller to medium organizations today may not have that kind of budgets. Does that mean you shouldn't get reskilled or trained? No, absolutely not. That becomes your responsibility. Also, I think it's an investment area. A lot of people think that training is something a corporate activity. It's not, right? Are you also, I mean, over and above, I think we spoke about networking and communities. Are you also looking at acquiring new skills through certification? Today there are so much of ed tech happening. There are so much of, I mean, also so much of courses out there. There is informal learning as well. So much of content is already there. If you want to get a formal education, there is a route already there. And there should be some part of your income you should invest in your own training and learning. That also means if you have to fly to some conferences or events and pay by yourself, even if your organization is not paying, because fundamentally building your career is your responsibility. It's very easy for organizations to let you go in the matter of one day, but then they're not going to claim the responsibility. It's really your responsibility, and you should think long term. I'm doing this job as of now. Where do I want to go? Where the market is moving, and how do I make myself employable in long term?
Okay, fantastic. Raghav, anything that you would like to add on that?
I feel that we need to realize. I mean, it probably takes some time. I mean, in terms of age as well, but there needs to come a time in your life when you realize that growth is always going to be a little painful. Growth cannot be easy. It just doesn't happen that way. It's same as basically I can't build a six pack abs without going through that pain of working out every day. That is one must need to kind of accept and kind of imbibe that, okay. And another parallel, or rather like a connected thought to that, is like looking at challenges as opportunities. Like your challenges are gonna ensure that you learn something new, and that is gonna give you that delta advantage over everybody else who's in a similar position as you are. So that mindset is something that needs to be cultivated. I mean, I guess what like, and that's something everybody realizes at their on own pace. But I think once that realization kicks in, they also then realize that, my growth or my career is essentially my responsibility, and I'll have to do those hard things. And those hard things could be like after a long day of work, still finding out that half an hour to read that extra book to or to try and take that extra course. But that happens when you once you find that mindset.
Yeah, I can share a personal example of also one of the reasons why I started this LinkedIn video series is to expand my network. Um, it forces me to talk to people that I know as well as I don't know, and pitch an idea to them, get acceptance for that idea, get commitment to actually spend an hour with me, and ultimately add value to somebody else. So, to your point, growth sometimes is painful, but it also forces you out of your comfort zone. I had another audience question from Prajosh, and he was like, many people reach out saying that, hey, can you refer me to an organization through on LinkedIn? And sometimes you don't get responses. Sometimes you say that I don't know you, so I can't really refer you. What would be your approach in terms of just sharing what can they do to help build that to help build references essentially?
So this is very similar to, you're just you're spamming your profile to loads of people and think that someone somewhere would it stick, or someone would pay attention to your email whom you don't know and will actually refer you, right? I think when you ask someone to do a favor, um, either you can treat that as just one-off activity, or you think about again building some kind of connection, or if not relationship, which is a big word, but some kind of connection, right? So
Yeah.
other person is also thinking, what's in it for me? Like, you're is just a one-off activity, or are you really interested to connect with me? And then you use that goodwill to build or get a referral. So whenever you find someone who can refer you, try and find connecting points. Like Jonas initially said, all three of us are from Capgemini. Use that as a connecting point. If you find a connecting point, talk about, hey, I found your blog post, I found your LinkedIn post really interesting, that caught my attention. Or some starting, or some like a ice breaking thing, because then that means the other person will think, hey, this person has invested some time in knowing who I am, and not just treating me as a transaction, that hey, just share my profile, right? Because then over the period of time, if that person, whether he or she actually give a referral or not, you will still connected with them, and there might be a time when they need your help, and if they do the same
Mhm.
thing, you're gonna ignore them as well, right? So I think whenever you ask for favors, or even for recruiters, right, when you a lot of times, hey, PFA my profile for this role, please let me know. That's it's art of connection and building, right? If you go to a event, or you go and meet unknown person, it's like asking, hey, my name is Sarang Brahme, can you please refer my profile? That person will be, what, where you are, how are you, why you're coming to me, right? Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So try connecting, find, maybe talk about the organization. Hey, by the way, I found your organization doing this project which has this kind of technologies. By the way, I have experience in that. I'm sure they would be needing some people. That's where you're building some level of connect, and not just spamming. Or if you have a common connection between you and him or her, trying you, hey, do you know this, do you know Jonas? I've worked with him before. I
Sure.
think he's a common connection. I would love to meet you at this point of time. I'm looking for a change, blah blah blah. So there's some, again, some starting point. So always do that rather than cold emailers. Recruiters get thousands of them every day. lot of hiring managers get these kind of mail 1,000 times a day. How do you stand out in your approach? Are you making him or her feel valued? I think these are the things that will stay in their mind, and then there is more probability to act. I can't give you assurance that they will actually act, right? Because today LinkedIn inboxes are like filled with junk and so many responses. But yes, there's better opportunity for you to be top of mind recall if you make it a warm lead or some kind of a connect.
Yeah. Raghav, I have a question for you, and this is from Abradeep. Apologies if I've got your name wrong. We see ghosting happening a lot in both in our personal life or in our social life as well as organizations. So his question is, why do you think candidates are not informed about the reason for rejection?
Um, I feel, I mean, one is, of course, Sarang said that, at the end of the day, there's a poor person. The HR is also a person trying to do a lot of work for their company. So there could be a bandwidth issue.
Yeah,
The other thing I feel is also honesty. I mean, the thing is, all of us, all not all of us, I mean, including all of us, all companies, when they put out a JD, they write these big things about their culture and how great their culture is, and what all do they mean. Uh, Now the thing is, if you are saying that you have that kind of a culture or you value that kind of a culture, then if you don't reply or even then you ghost, then the person feels more disappointed. I
yeah,
mean, if you do think that, and I'm talking more from the corporate point of view, if a corporate does feel that, they probably wouldn't have time to individually reply to each of the applicants, they should mention it upfront. They should mention it in the GD that, hey, you'd only hear from us if you make it to the next round. I think candidates are fine with that. That's not ghosting, because
mm,
then candidates get an answer. They do get an answer. The silence becomes the answer in that case. But when you say that, you're gonna, you're this company which has this kind of a culture, and we value every individual who's gonna apply to us, and then you ghost somebody, that's when the candidate also feels kind of cheated almost in a small way.
yeah. If you talk about transparency, accountability, all of these as values that your organization espouses, and you don't follow it, then
Yeah.
it's like, why are you lying to me then? This is not a good place.
Joseph, just to add, right, there is other
Yeah,
side of the coin.
okay,
When and in all of my life, I've looked at the candidates which apply from career page, especially
yeah,
career page, and nowadays even from LinkedIn, and there's a big percentage of candidates who never ever fit to the job,
yeah,
right? That means they're not reading the job descriptions.
yeah,
They are just spamming their resumes and hoping that someone somewhere will catch that profile and I have an exact match and give me a call and everything will go through. I think it's important for candidates as well to read the job description. Sometimes I know they are very, very lengthy. They're not as attractive as they should be. They are asking for 15 different skills and so on and so forth. But that's the reality in the org, right? So read the job description, see what kind of profile that they are looking at, do a self evaluation. And there's a stream of thought out there in the market that, hey, even if you are 50% match, send your profile. I don't agree to that stream of thought, because
yeah,
in that case you're investing into emotion of someone going to respond to me, and you're not doesn't fit to the role unless you know the person, you know the situation. But just spamming, the resumes on the career page and then saying that, hey, HR is not responding. I think there has to be a expectation management from both the sides. While
Yeah.
I completely align to both of you made, but there's a
yeah.
reality as well, right? So are
True,
you
true. It's the
are
other
you a
side.
good candidate? Do you believe that's the reality?
Yeah, yeah, very interesting points. We have just about 5 minutes. So I just want to kind of use the time maybe to ask you guys to just summarize, in terms of our topic was impact of job search rejection on mental health. Um, maybe just summarize what are some of the signs, um, and how can you seek help when it comes to affecting mental health. Um, I know I'm asking a big question, but Raghav or Sarang, would you like to help
Um,
me out?
See, the signs are pretty individualistic to the person. The way I like the way I would show my disappointment, or even to, like, if it's a very severe case, then even my depression is very
Mm,
different from how you would show that.
mm,
I mean, so in particular is something that's to spot. Uh, what I would rather ask people to focus on is basically awareness.
mm,
If like, and this is something, there's one of the reasons I actually started Whistle was because an incident happened in my friend circle. And my first thought was like, why was I not aware of, like, why did I know that I, like, a person was suffering from something? If I knew, I would have definitely, reached out and stuff like that. And I said, like, waiting for get into a crisis and then expecting them to reach out, or expecting yourself to be able to identify the signs is probably an approach that doesn't work. So my approach is that, I'm gonna keep talking about mental fitness, mental health, and in a long term manner, continuously, so that my friends, or at least people in my circle, in my community, are already educated about, how to deal with when rejections happen, or how to deal with whenever there is a challenging situation that's happening in your life. And by virtue that I'm being that person who's talking about it continuously, I like that also ensures that, like, in case they want to reach out to me, they would know that, this guy would take that seriously. Like, this is a conversation that's important to him. Like, it's a conversation he values.
yeah.
So I would focus that all of us essentially should ensure that in our communities and our circle, we remove the stigma around mental health,
Mm,
and we treat it like how we actually discuss our physical health. I mean, there are issues there as well. There's a lot of fat shaming and stuff that happens with physical health as well,
yeah.
but at least we are open about it. I'll look at you and I'll, like, Jonas, from the last time I saw you, it looks like you have bulked up a little,
Mm,
or you have lost a little weight. So that just normalizes the conversation about physical health. I would say, like, we need to normalize it to the same level for mental health.
excellent. Excellent. Sarang?
Yeah, I think it's first important. I think you exactly mentioned, like, being aware of what's happening with you, and different people react to this situation very, very differently. But I think this is where friends and family really come into picture. I think it's important to express and talk as well, rather than just holding it to yourself by saying, hey, no, I mean, okay, what's going to happen if I've talked to my friends, they're not going to find job for me. I think the idea is not that, right? And you let it out, you let people reflect on it and see the other point of view. Maybe you're not viewing the full picture. People around you who care for you will help you to see the bigger picture, give you other avenues to explore, even if that doesn't help you right now, but you're actually thinking about it. And again, I'll talk about, again, going through that process of change management, right, where you become frustrated, where you don't accept how this can happen to me, to, okay, how do I overcome it? I think accepting the fact that's happening with me, it's all okay to for me to go through this, and then seek help actively, rather than getting into a time where, okay, there's more issues like depression and all of those things are happening. Finding early signs, and then talking and getting more help and support around you. And I think finding a truth that you are not alone in this. Number
Correct.
one, you are not just the one person who's going through it. It's the matter of how the economy is, how the world is changing. And then even if that happens, there are people who still care for you, you still have a value in someone else's life and people around you. I think that reaffirmation of what you mean is sometimes also important.
Wonderful. Well said, Sarang. Reaffirmation that you're not alone in this. There are people around you to support you. And talking about mental health is try to make it as normal as possible, as part of our normal discussion.
Yeah, and just I mean something that Sarang mentioned earlier, detaching your self identity from your professional identity.
Mm,
Knowing that your professional identity is a sub circle or a sub part of your overall identity, that needs to be done. I guess given given that we are in India and it's a competitive works, like India is competitive place, like, right?
yeah.
You have, for the same job, you have way more number of qualified people, able people than you'd probably get in other countries. In specifically need to like actively need to this self identities as a mixture of multiple things and not just their LinkedIn bio. So
Mm,
that's just something I wanted to circle back on. That's, I think, is really important.
okay. On that note, thank you all for joining in. This has been, a deep conversation. I hope it has provided you pointers on how to tackle job search rejection, and also realize that you're not alone in it. We have to normalize the conversation around mental health. I also want to thank Sarang and Raghav for joining me in the session, for providing your insights, and helping spread the message to folks. So, on that note, thank you everyone. That concludes our LinkedIn Live video stream.